Good space time, everyone, and welcome to a new episode of the Citizen Web3 podcast, your source for educational insights into the Web3 universe and your connection hub for discovering those that contribute to building the decentralized world. Today, we are joined by Luke Saunders from Delphi Labs. We talk about investing into projects, being at the forefront of tech, and hustling. We discuss advantage, better crypto, and the need for decentralization. Finally, we touch upon decentralized AI, power consumption, and the purpose to be happy. If you enjoy our podcast, please share this episode onto your favorite social platform and help us spread Web3 values into the universe.
And the people who tend to be successful are the people who are already pretty connected. They're very good at hustling. You know, a lot of people say the token is the product, right? Yeah, my mission, the mission of Delphi, like broadly across the three companies, is to make crypto happen better and faster. There's a bunch of steps that you could decentralize. You could decentralize the data acquisition. You could decentralize the data labeling. It can't just be decentralized for the sake of it, right? It needs to be decentralized to result in a better product.
Hi, everybody. Welcome to a new episode of the Citizen Web3 podcast. Today, I have Luke Saunders co-founder. He's the co-founder of Delphi Labs. Luke, hi. Welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks a lot. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, man. Glad to have you. We had Jose Macedo from, I think it was over a year ago already, back on Citizen Cosmos, back then it was called. And we spoke a little bit Delphi Labs, a little bit about VC, a little bit about bug bounties and funding. But before we get into all that, I'm going to do the traditional thing and ask you to introduce yourself. And in that introduction, maybe talk a little bit about how you got into Web3 and what are you personally busy on working right now?
Yeah, well, that's a big question. So I'm Luke. I'm the CTO and co-founder of Delphi Labs. I'm also, like Jose, involved in the venture firm. So if you don't know Delphi as a brand, I would say that's split into three different companies. The first being Delphi Digital, which is a research firm. We have a group of analysts, some of the best analysts in the space. We produce research reports. And we have subscribers who get access to those reports, right? So if you have like a 6 or 7 figure portfolio, I think, yeah, definitely makes sense to go and subscribe to that immediately. Then there's Delphi Ventures, which is a VC firm. We invest in projects all across the crypto space. And lastly, Delphi Labs. Delphi Labs is like the builder arm of Delphi. So we incubate projects. We've incubated, the first two we did were in Cosmos, Mars and Astroport, originally on Terra. And now we have some new ones that are coming through. And how I got into crypto. So I my background's technical. I was a developer for like 20 years and I started some companies, so a little bit entrepreneurial. I knew about Bitcoin since the very beginning. I used to like refresh constantly this forum called Hacker News from Y Combinator. So yeah, I knew about it since the very start. I knew about it. It was like a big thing when it got to $1 even. And I bought some in 2012 or 13. And then, I had some, like I kind of followed it a bit. And then when Ethereum came out, and the first projects on Ethereum started to launch, like Bancor was the first one that I really took notice of. I was like, oh, this is interesting. I think there's something, I'm not sure exactly what's going to happen here, but I think it could be big. So I wanted to get close to it somehow. So I started hanging around in the Bancor Telegram group, which was very early. At that time, there was like 40 people in the Telegram group. Like crypto communities weren't even really a thing at the time. I just started hanging out and answering questions and talking to the founders and stuff. And then when Bancor got bigger, they did an ICO, one of the first big ICOs. And as the founders got busier, doing ICO stuff, they asked me and a few others to be ambassadors and like answer questions, and we'll get some tokens. And I was like, okay, I'm not sure what that will lead to, but might as well do it. Then their ICO was very successful. And then after that, a lot of other projects went to Bancor and saw Bancor's success with their ICO, and they asked them what they did and who like managed their community and stuff. And they recommended us, the ambassadors. So we put together a company called AmazeX, and that was like the very start of the ICO boom. And yeah, we started with 6 of us, and like within a year, we'd had over 100 clients and a team of over 100 people. It's pretty wild. 7 figures monthly revenue. Just, it was crazy times. So that was my full-time thing, obviously. And the ICO boom burst, and then one thing led to another, and I ended up joining with Jose, Delphi. Originally I was a CTO of the research arm, and then slowly, or fairly soon after that, transitioned to be the co-founder of Delphi Labs.
I mean, I'm gonna dig it a little bit because I dig it with everybody, and it's good because usually everybody starts with the professional story slightly, but I always say to everybody, nobody wakes up and says, "Damn, I'm in the digital and IT business in crypto." It doesn't happen like that. What led you personally? What was your personal driver? That like, okay, you heard about Bitcoin in since the beginning. I can show off as well. No, I'm joking. But it was a joke. I'm joking. Look, sorry. But like seriously, what was your internal drive? I mean, why not? I mean, you were obviously from. I know a little bit about your background, and I happen to know a little bit your background, and I know you are a very technical guy, and I know that you could have probably, I'm assuming, chosen any path, much probably. I mean, you didn't know that Bunker was going to be a success. Nobody knew that Bunker was going to be a success, that Ethereum would come out. Why did crypto attract you? Why not go work for, I don't know, any successful company, make a good salary and be happy and not bother with this startup thing?
Yeah, well, I tried that at first. I tried that in the first 4 years of my career. I had a job. I didn't really care about the job that much. I was a developer, but I was in a band at the time, and that was my thing that I cared about. And I switched to another job, and they used some open source framework. And they said that my job basically is to be across this framework. So I started contributing to it and ended up falling into doing open source work. And then I ended up working a lot. I quit that job, and then I started just consulting off the back of being a core member of this open source framework team. And I worked a lot for startups, and I saw startups that succeeded and startups that failed. So I became kind of quite entrepreneurial, I think, off of that. Because the thing with consulting for startups is it's very depressing if you consult for one and it fails, because the person who started it loses all their money. It's just a very depressing experience, to be honest. So I started trying to pick ones that I thought would be successful and go and work for them. And I got all right. I got pretty good at it, actually. It's helped me a lot with the venture stuff that we do. And so, yeah, I became quite entrepreneurial. And in tech, when you work in tech, it pays to be at the very forefront of tech, because that's where the interesting stuff happens. It was crypto in 2016. It's still crypto now, but it's also AI very much now. And if you want to be successful or even just do interesting work, then it just pays to be at the very edge of technology. If you're just making web applications for some SaaS business, that's pretty boring, I think. So I don't want to do that. So that's how I found crypto. And I also believed in the crypto ideals. It just made sense to me that you have this very closed traditional financial system, and there's a lot of skimming off the top in that system from intermediaries, basically. And when you consider things like email, they're just open standards. The email goes one way, goes the other way, whatever. And it seemed like money should be like that. It seemed like it should just be open standards, free, deployed on a smart contract network like Ethereum. And I thought that made a lot of sense, and that some interesting things would happen there. And so that's why I decided really to get into Web3, because you want to work at the edge of technology, and crypto was that. And you also, I believed in the ideals of crypto and still do. So, yeah.
Here is a strange question for you. What was your success points to selecting the correct startup? Making sure that the startup you selected wasn't
Yeah.
at the edge. Sorry, was at the edge. Sorry, was at the edge.
Yeah. Well, I mean, when I say pick a successful startup, back then I wasn't thinking of one that would be at the edge of technology. It helps, right? But I just wanted one that would not fail, basically. And they were usually social networks or whatever. And the thing, it's kind of hard to put into words. It's mostly just a feeling of talking to the founders and just getting like a sense of like, is what they're building, does it make sense? Like sometimes you'll see people, this happened especially after Facebook became big. They come and the idea basically would just to be Facebook, and they just want to copy that, and that would be their idea. And you're like, well, it's not going to work with it because Facebook's already Facebook. So there was a lot of that. But the main thing I think is the founders. The founders, just a certain type of person. It's not like someone who's got a job doing something unrelated and they just have this dream of starting their own company. And otherwise they have no connections or anything. Those people can be successful, but it's just harder. And the people who tend to be successful are the people who are like already pretty connected. They're very good at hustling. They can go out and like get on a call with whoever they need to get on a call with. And also they know people who can like be in the background, pulling strings, be it investors or other big companies or whatever. So it's hard to describe. I've tried to think about this before as I do venture stuff. But it's mostly just a feeling, sort of meet the founders. Does the idea make sense? And you can weed out 90% of the projects just based on that, really.
What's the difference between doing that when you were doing it for startups and doing it in Web3? What is the biggest, like I mean, okay, I can hear hustling, I can hear about some red flags here. Are the things in crypto the same? Are those, let's say, characteristics, or there is something that makes it stand out from the Web2 world?
It's very similar, yeah. It's very similar. So, I think the differences are just like what they're building. So the stuff I just talked about is all the same, but in crypto, you need to be building something that has product market fit within like crypto. It needs to sort of make sense. And, if you come now and you want to build a new smart contract chain, there's like a million places to build smart contract stuff now. So it's going to be very, very difficult unless you're really differentiated. Like even Sui and Aptos, which are good tech. I mean, we had one of our developers dig into it. He thought it was like better than Solana, and they struggled to get developers, So you need to have the right idea at the right time. The rest just doesn't work.
What is the last question in that direction? What was I don't know, one project? Doesn't matter whether it was a startup or crypto. Doesn't matter that you, until the very last second, were certain that it was going to succeed. It failed though, and what did you learn from that failure?
In crypto,
doesn't matter, crypto or startups, whatever comes to your mind first.
It's not normally so sudden. Like you just sort of you get a sense it's not working out, and it might take 6 months for it to actually fail. Some are obviously going to fail from the start. I can't think of a good one, honestly. There are some that I thought would be huge and then kind of got overtaken by competition. I think Banker was a pretty good example of that. Like they invented really the AMM, right? They invented the XYK curve, and all was going well. I think they maybe like put a lot of the community on the wrong side of them when they raised so much money, because then the price kind of went down afterwards. But then the main thing that happened was like Uniswap came along. Uniswap was permissionless, whereas Banker was very like biz devy. And then just kind of ate their lunch, really. Like Banker was still a thing, obviously, but it's not the biggest AMM by far. So I was kind of surprised by that, because normally like the first mover has a big advantage. Like Uniswap seems like the first mover, right? But actually wasn't. So that's probably the one I would say.
And would you say that the takeaway from that was like that it's not like that first movers don't have to have certainly an advantage? Would you say that was the biggest takeaway?
Yeah. It's the same in Web2, but first movers have an advantage for sure. But then if something comes along which is significantly better, or like significantly better product market fit, like the thing they normally say in tech is you have to be 10x better than the incumbent to beat it.
No.
I guess Uniswap was that, because people like the permissionless pools and all the other stuff that Uniswap did. So yeah, that's very, so there's definitely an advantage to being first, for sure.
I remember Banker very well. I remember the ICO I participated, and it was a lot of fun. Of course. It was, I think it was Konstantin P2P. Well, back then it was not P2P, of course. Lomashuk, who was the one who was with Cyberfund. The guys were participating, and of course, I was working back then with the Golos, and 2016, I think it was, if I'm not mistaken, right? 15, 16.
You worked with P2P?
I worked with before P2P existed. I worked with Cyberfund. P2P back then didn't exist.
Cyberfund predated P2P. Interesting.
Yes, by a lot. It was a lot of fun, but let's not switch sides, right? Because I feel like it's gonna switch sides. I want to concentrate on you, but I'm welcome to answer any questions, of course. But I want to concentrate on you. But tell me, like, what is, because Delphi Labs and Delphi, like the VC part of Delphi, right, and the accelerator part of Delphi, there is a lot. And even when I spoke to Jose, which was like, there was a lot. And I tried to speak to him about like the personal mission of Delphi Labs and his personal mission and how do they align. What about you? Do they today, after so many years of, seeing failures and successes where, you were sure one thing and it happened another thing, like with Bancor, or the opposite, you saw like you said, there were crazy times with revenue being 7 figures or whatever, but internally, did the mission that you had, or at least the idea of the mission for yourself, that you had as Luke, does it match today with the reality of where Delphi is today and what you guys are trying to achieve and to do? And what is it?
Yeah. My mission, the mission of Delphi, like broadly across the 3 companies, is to make crypto happen better and faster than it would without us. And that's mine too. Like, I want to build stuff that gets used, build stuff that's valuable, for the world. And that's been the mission since I started in crypto and still is now. And that's especially true of Delphi Labs, So Delphi Labs is in a good position where we can, if we see a gap in the space, something that needs to be built, we can make it happen. So that's happening with one of our new projects, which is a capital formation platform. It's not announced yet, but essentially bringing like similar to ICOs, bringing those back in a compliant way, because we see on the VC side that it's not really fair that a lot of our advantage comes from arbitraging our level of access versus everyone else's. It shouldn't be like that. It should be equal opportunities for everybody, and then it just comes down to your like skill in picking good projects. So that's one example, I think, where we saw how the space was. It was like very VC controlled. VCs have access to the early deals, and we thought that wasn't fair. So we tried to find a way to, allow projects to raise earlier from the community without screwing themselves legally. So we were very lucky. We had at the time, he's not our GC anymore because he's working on a project that we're also incubating with Gabe Shapiro. So yeah, he saw that there's this MiCA regulation coming out, which allows for token sales. So he wanted to like build something around that. That's a good example, I think, because I think if that exists and that works, it'll be better for the space.
Sorry, I didn't press my most biggest enemy button is the mute button. You mentioned like, it might sound like I'm gonna go a little bit off topic, well, which is a little bit, but it's not in a way, because a lot of them, there is a correlation that I want to ask you about. A lot of them older, when I say older, I mean people who have been in this industry for, let's say, 10 plus years at least. People who like around here, when you talk to them, doesn't matter about their rate of success or what do they do. And I'm sorry if my assumption here is wrong, but I can sort of read between the lines the same vibe. And here's the vibe. And here's what it's not exactly a question. It's more of a statement. And I'm going to ask you what you think about it. So when I talk to most of the people like that, it seems that regardless of what they do, their main source of, let's say, income, loud word, but it is what it is, remains tokens and understanding the difference between good and a bad project and knowing how to pick good projects. That little, you called it hustling at the beginning, but not necessarily hustling. I would say maybe it's even R&D, hustling, whatever. It's a little bit of both, I guess, right? I mean, and it sounds like when you talk about, everything that you had for you. I mean, we only talked for like 18 minutes, but still, I can kind of hear that between the lines. I might be wrong, but is it the case? And if it is the case, why is it the reason that most of the entrepreneurs, the bigger entrepreneurs in this industry, still earn from token trading and understanding the market rather than from their business? I'm not saying that the business here is not successful, God forbid, but in general, okay, it's a kind of a big statement. I don't know if it makes any sense, but yeah, I'm gonna ask you to comment on that.
Sure. Yeah, I'm not sure that's always true. I think if you're a founder of a Web3 project, unless that project fails, probably most of your wealth, like your net worth, is going to be in tokens in that project, because you always get team allocation of tokens. Often salaries are pretty low, and tokens are like relatively compared to salary quite high. In my case, though, I don't trade, but most of the money that I've made in crypto has come from outside of my job. So I have a salary, but just around the time that I joined Delphi, I was running a validator for Solana, like when Solana was in testnet phase, right? Yeah, probably know about this if you're involved in cyber funds. And then it became mainnet beta, and I was still running this validator, and I said incentivize testnet, right, and incentivize mainnet beta. So you get tokens every month, which at the time, Solana was trading below $1, I think, at the time. Time weren't worth very much, but they were locked, so you couldn't claim them for like a year or something. By the time they were claimable, Solana was like at all-time highs at the last cycle, $140 or $200 or something. So that was, ridiculous reward for running a validator. But now, sometimes I do angel deals. Sometimes I invest in projects that I believe in, as an angel. But most of my money, I think, I'm just going to put into the fund, because the Delphi Ventures, if you don't know, is just internal capital. So basically it's our money that we manage. We don't have external LPs. And I don't believe that I can outperform, the fund on my own. So it just makes sense to put the money in there and have the team kind of manage it. And then, I do have tokens in the projects that we incubate, but it always feels kind of wrong to sell them. So I have a lot of Mars and Astroport, but I've never sold any.
I
Probably
understand
never
how
will.
you feel. I understand how you feel. Is there a point though where you tell yourself, like, actually, that's a good topic, I think. Is there a point though? Because I mean, I was involved with several funds over my life, and I can definitely say that crypto funds, and I can definitely say that I have been sucked into that loophole of I'm not gonna sell because it feels wrong. And I'm talking about personal tokens here, and it was not the correct decision. I don't know how it... I mean, I'm not saying here Mars or us support are bad, by no means. I think they have their pluses and minuses, and we can talk about it. But what about that? When is the right... Let's say if you were to say an advice now, for the guys out there, starting their Web3 journey, or not starting, because I guess that our audience is far from that. But what would be that? How do you find, like, what do you do to find that balance of work-life balance in terms of like selling, knowing when is the right time to, okay, the project is free now, I can get rid of those tokens because it's correct? I don't know. What would be the stage here? How does it work in a correct way?
Yeah.
Is there a correct way?
I think that, there's not a correct way for sure. I think the morally right way is to sell them when the project is successful and it's achieved all the goals, right? So for those two projects, Mars and Astroport, originally they were on Terra, before they blew up, and they were successful. Like Astroport was the top 3 AMM in the world, I think, at the time. It was like very valuable, very liquid. Then Mars had just launched, but had a very successful launch with its lock drop thing. It had, can't remember how much TVR, 400 million or something. So if we just seen out the launch of Mars, then I think it would have been fair to sell some, because we've done a good job, and now Mars and Astroport aren't successful by our measure, so it just doesn't seem right to be rewarded for that, Should keep on pushing. And then if we get them to the point where we think they are successful, then it's fair to sell. But everyone can make their own decision. That's my logic. But there are other team members who maybe would like to sell or whatever. But I think generally it's ex-team members who sell when the project isn't successful, and all the people who are still on the team, they feel this like responsibility to not damage the project or like dump on the community or whatever. So I think like generally the teams for those projects haven't sold any really. There's some people who left it, but generally I think people want to sell when they think they succeeded, and so far it's not the case.
Okay, it's a fair answer, I think, like to understand, they have this internal feeling of, okay, I put enough on the map, kind of thing, for the map to give me a cup of tea. I guess I don't know if I don't know if this is the bottom of it, but I'm gonna ask you one last question though, like in that direction, and then I'm gonna change topic slightly to AI. I wanted to ask you a couple of questions, but one last kind of like adverse. Well, I don't know how to say it correctly in English. An advice type question that I'm gonna ask you is I'm pretty sure that you have a lot of experience in that. So what would be your advice to builders and teams out there that want to scale? I mean, especially teams that are highly technological and don't have that hustle side that you were talking about. What is your advice, or a no-go, the opposite, the anti-advice for them not to do, if they want to scale and they don't know how to hustle?
Scale in the sense of like making the team big, going from a small team to a big team, that kind of scaling?
Oh, I was gonna at first say, look at that question how you want to look at, but no, I was talking about the project itself. My original question was more about not the team, but okay, let's say they have the technology, the team is there. I don't know, there is 5, 6, 7, doesn't matter how many, whatever the money to feed the team comes from. But let's say they don't have those, I don't know, side hustles they don't know how to go and pull the strings. They don't know how to do any of that. And they are deeply developers. And we've seen this in crypto many times, where you have teams of developers. They are a bit stuck. They don't know what to do. They don't want to go to the big VCs. So like, what would be your advice here, if any at all, of course, apart from go find somebody who can hustle?
Yeah, you need to learn, basically. Like
there we go.
there's a phrase in Web2 called "get out of the building." I think that's what they say. Basically, most founders and most builders, they're happy building, right? So they want to build their projects, and they're in their house, their office, or whatever, and they're building, and that's their comfort zone. And if you don't have that like drive to just kind of know what to do, it's very common for teams, especially technical ones, to just like build and then release the thing, and they haven't done any of the other stuff, right? They haven't left the building, so to speak. And so you need to do that. You need to be visible. Helps a lot to have some profile on Twitter or some social media platform, or have a podcast or something to give yourself some visibility or like some clout. I'm very lucky in Delphi that I don't have that many Twitter followers, but a lot of people in Delphi do. So yeah, it's very helpful to like get the message out there about things. But yeah, if you're like a builder and you're building in the space and you're building your project and you really believe in it, you do need to tell people about it. You will need to, go and reach out to projects that it might make sense to integrate with, and jump on a call with them. I think the highest EV thing you can do, even though it's very time consuming and really not rewarding at all, is just to try and like build a Twitter following, because then I think it's much easier to reach out to people if you have a lot of Twitter followers. They sort of take you more seriously, I think, somehow. But it is very hard to do that for some people. For some people, it might be easier to, just hassle people like you to go on their podcasts, beg and plead or whatever, or pitch them what you want to talk about, just to be more visible and get more followers that way. But it is an art in itself, separate to building.
It's ironic. When we were called Citizen Cosmos, I was refusing Jay an interview for 2.5 years because I wanted him to talk about him and not about Cosmos and not about Noland. He did agree essentially, and we did do the interview, and it was, in my opinion, a big success because it showed like his side as JSJ, not as the founder of Noland or Cosmos. And I was like, no, I don't care. I'm not going to. If we talk only Noland, no, we're not going to do it. And then essentially you're like, okay. But by the way, for all the listeners out there, Luke is being shy. Luke has over 13,000 followers on Twitter. If I'm not mistaken, it's 13.6 thousand. And just today I was reading this meme where people were like, that saying that the web and social media slightly ruined our complex, because back 30 years ago, if 12 people were with you out together and watch something, the same thing. Now today, when you have 12 views, it's very low. But back 30 years ago, if you're in a garage and 12 of your friends came around, you'd be a big success. So like, it's like, but no, I understand what you mean. Of course, I understand what you mean. Um, Go on. Sorry, you were going to say something.
No, I was going to say nothing. I was going to say, yeah, it helps and wrap up.
Sorry. sorry. I was like going to slowly take it, because when we originally spoke about the recording, we mentioned AI and agents, and I think kind of like a easy topic to take it from where we are to AI is this is kind of with the help of my team, but they found, I'm going to look at it because I need some help here from that. And they quoted you here about comparing Apple and OpenAI, and talking about the way that commoditizing, basically, that Apple thinks, people don't have to pay to get access, to AI, and OpenAI is more building of a sustainable business. So I'm not going to read the whole quote because it's a bit long, but I think I know what you're talking about, just to get you into that mindset. I don't know when that was because they didn't put a date on it, but before we get to anything, do you still think like that today, that the LLMs have to charge money in order to be successful businesses as access points?
Yeah, I think so. It depends broadly. So in the case of OpenAI, for example, they need to make money somehow, right? So they could use, ChatGPT as a loss leader and make it free and then make all their money off API access or whatever. The tweet you're referring to about commoditization is there's this conversation that's happening right now in AI about whether models will plateau or whether they will, whether it will be an S curve and it might plateau for a bit and then it will go exponential again in terms of improvement. Because the improvement from GPT-3 to GPT-4 was enormous. It's just naturally speculation about GPT-5. Would it be as big a jump or would it be kind of plateauing off? And the tweet you're talking about, I'm trying to remember what it was on about. So Apple had just announced the AI thing recently with like confidential computing and stuff, and the deal with OpenAI. And Apple doesn't pay OpenAI. OpenAI doesn't pay Apple. That's very different from like search, where Google pays Apple. So I think the theory there was that both sides of that deal believe that LLMs are going to plateau, and one big LLM is not going to be significantly better than another one, which means that from OpenAI's point of view, distribution is key. You can't just rely on having a better product because they're all going to be about the same, and there's no better distribution for AI than Apple devices. That's going to be probably where most people interact with their AI assistants from. At least most people, who have money to pay for it. So it makes sense for OpenAI just to be there. And then for Apple, they if it's going to be commoditized, then they don't need to pay for it. They can just, they know they have the advantage, and I assume Apple will make money I think the OpenAI thing is free for now, but I imagine there'll be like an app store and there'll be a bunch of models in there. And if you want the premium one, you have to pay, and Apple will take their 30% cut. So they're like Apple will have its own AI, mostly on device and some confidential running on confidential compute in the cloud. But they'll also have models from other providers, and they'll take a chunk of that. So yeah, the commoditized, whether the rate of progress with LLMs drops off and they all become commoditized or not is like a big question right now. It's very important for the crypto AI. Yeah, very important for crypto AI as well. So I'm interested to see how that plays out.
What do you think in general about? I, I, well, let me go and zoom out a little bit. I was since we started to build some time ago, some products, I mean, developing, and it was a long time before that I didn't attend conferences, like three years. And recently I attended Berlin Blockchain Week, which was just like a month ago, whatever, something like that. And I attended a lot of side events to do, not a lot, but there was quite a number of side events that advertise themselves as AI related, or you know, something like that, or at least the words AI were somehow in the description or in the title of the event. And I must say, like, some of them were quite cool, but definitely I met some cool people. um what struck me though, and here is, like, you spoke about models, you spoke about plateau. This is where I'm kind of gonna try and focus. What struck me though is that on those events, I really didn't meet. I met cool developers, but no doubts. But I really didn't meet thinkers, and I'm sorry if anybody's going to get offended by that, but it is an honest opinion. Thinkers that are thinking about how, beyond of what you just said, how to make an LLM model not plateau tomorrow or the day after tomorrow, how to decentralize the consensus that is underlying the LLM model. Like, I didn't see anybody in either of those meetups or in the conversations after, or the after party, so to speak, where usually people are more open to talk. And when I started to bring up those subjects, people look at me like I'm crazy. They were like, dude, we just want to run our like more LLM model on a decentralized cloud. That's all. This is the AI for us. And I was like, but that's got nothing to do with decentralized AI. That is just running a centralized model or or whatever, because on the cloud. So what's like, I know there's no questions here, but it's like kind of like something that struck me, and I was kind of like, oh, it doesn't seem that there is a huge line of development there. So I guess the first kind of question is like, what do you think about DAI, and how do we stop it from plateauing? How do we keep on investing effort, the right type of effort, into developing it in a more of a decentralized manner rather than running, models on somebody else's computer and calling it decentralized AI?
Yeah. Like for the decentralized things, it needs to be better, right? There needs to be a reason to do it. And ultimately, that comes down to resulting in a better product, I think, for most people at the end of the day. So like why, so there's in terms of creating a model and running a model, there's a bunch of steps that you could decentralize. You could decentralize the data acquisition. You could decentralize the data labeling, fine tuning. There's just a bunch of stuff. Yeah, there's a bunch of things that you could decentralize. So you need a reason to decentralize them. So just to give an example, you can imagine a future where governments have tried to censor or control AI, either to like restrict how powerful AI can be that ordinary people have access to, or they have like regulations that restrict what it can say or what it can't say. And in general, you can just kind of imagine if they try and apply the same level of regulations they have to the financial system to AI, could get quite nerfed, basically. Um, and so in that case, if you wanted to have a model which like sidestepped all those regulations, then running it or training it and running it in a decentralized way would be one of those, right? Like there might be privacy concerns that all of these like AI providers like OpenAI have to capture your prompts and make them available to the government upon request, which I mean, I'm sure that would be the case. And if you don't want that, then yeah, the decentralized AI would be an alternative to that. So actually in that scenario, models plateauing would be a good thing because it would mean that open source models would be able to catch up to the state of the art, like closed source models, such as like OpenAI is developing. And if you have like very good open source models, then you can run them in a decentralized way, which would be outside of the reach of governments and regulations and stuff. But it remains to be seen. So that could result in a better product, for some people. Then there's other steps like decentralized AI is a big term. So like it might be cheaper to train a model on decentralized compute. Right now, that's not possible because when you train a model, all the computers need to be in the same place. They need to be very close together because of backpropagation, I think. But there are smart people working on solutions to that. The argument for training a model on decentralized compute is that it's cheaper because you can tap into spare capacity. So I'm a little bit skeptical of that narrative, but I mean that might play out to be true. And yeah, there's other angles of decentralized model training. It's a big space, but yeah, like broadly, it can't just be decentralized for the sake of it, right? It needs to be decentralized to result in a better product. So we just need to do a lot of experimentation and see how things play out to really understand what those are. Because right now, crypto AI overlap is very, very new, and everyone's just trying to figure out where the value is.
It's an interesting point that you make, about decentralizing the teaching, and even more interesting a point that there needs to be a reason. And to my understanding of the market, and I like to think of somebody who understands the market more or less, and especially with AI, I was lucky enough to see the market a couple of years before it started to evolve from the inside. So I was lucky, and looking at it today, I see that on the market there is roughly 3-4 projects. I'm not going to go into them right now because it's not about that actually, in my opinion, can be labeled as, okay, this is really something beyond offering services for AI. This is really decentralized AI in one way or another, either on the consensus level, or at least they trying. I'm not saying that they're succeeding, but they trying. The thing is that all those, apart from one project, which is very huge and everybody knows about it, and it's not, by the way, decentralized, and nobody cares about the other ones because everybody's looking at the market cap, and all the market cared about was when, and again, I don't want to like go bad on anybody, but we taken the 3 projects that were on their foundation spent 8 years on the market. There's Fetch, there is Singularity, and I forgot who was the third one, and they united to create another marketplace. And it's like, hey guys, but like I think we're gonna reach the plateau because, not because the models are gonna have a problem, but because we are trying to drastically to reach the plateau, to bump into the plateau. That's the feeling to me. And I'm sorry if it comes across like a bit like an opinion, but I don't know. I have that feeling that nobody is interested in it. Nobody has an interest in it. More people are more interested in the money behind it, at least today.
Yeah, I mean that's like business in general, I think. I mean, there's a mix of both. I mean, for a project to be successful, it needs to, a lot of people say the token is the product, right? And ultimately, if you want to build a project in the first place, it needs to, investors of one form or another need to think it will be valuable in the future. So yeah, there is a tendency when building projects just to get sucked into thinking about the value. I'd say in crypto AI, that's less true of every other space though. There's a lot of teams where because everyone's sort of trying to find where the value is. And so they're just kind of doing interesting work and seeing if they can figure out how to monetize it later. So there's like Nous, for example, which trains open source models, like creates and trains open source models. Nous Research that we invested in. They produce these open source models and they're free. I think they have some income from the BitTensor subnet. But yeah, I think, generally in business and in crypto, people need to make money. People want a token that's valuable and they kind of need to do that just to raise money in the first place. In crypto AI, it's less true. And there's just a lot of research going on trying to figure out where the value is and how crypto AI can, might be good for the world or whatever.
Do you think that not just for crypto AI, but AI in general and for agents in general, do you think that one of the, or what do you think rather of the next, again, statement that one of the largest, or one of the possible largest what's the right word here, walls or obstacles for carrying on, and again, not related to crypto in general and to AI in general, is the fear of letting go of the black box. And what I mean here, we mentioned training, and it seems that when you talk to even very highly specialized AI experts, when you start talking about letting go of the consensus and allowing users to decide what is what, people go like, no, 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 no. People will never understand what is a picture and what is a piece of string. Okay, but maybe that is the right way. So I'm just saying, do you think that that fear of keeping to traditions of that, there must be like a central body that when it comes to training and teaching the models cannot be, let go of, it has to be remaining with one person or two people or three people or a group of people, doesn't matter. Do you think that that could be one of the biggest obstacles in us as humanity progressing towards SGI or whatever is the correct word to call it?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. Yeah, it's the thing to understand is these models are just so expensive to train. There's already talk of Facebook building $100 billion cluster, which is just like preposterous amount of money. It would consume as much power as like London, I think, by itself. Sort of ridiculous. And so if you spend that much money on creating a model, you're going to want to keep it closed. Like Facebook's models currently are open, but I mean, I imagine they'll go closed at some point if they're spending that much money, just because you don't want your competitors to get the model right. And so if your model is closed, you need to kind of run it in a closed way and control it in a closed way. And so it comes back to the plateauing thing. If they do plateau, then investment will kind of stop, and then the open source ones will catch up until a new architecture is discovered or whatever, I guess. So yeah, like right now, all of the incentives lead to keeping these models closed and like tightly controlled. That might change over time. We'll have to see. Right now, the trajectory seems to be going more and more closed. So like Facebook's model is open right now. I imagine it will probably will go closed at some point. Mark Zuckerberg has hinted at that. And we'll just have to see how it plays out. But yeah, right now it's on a closed trajectory, which is a bad thing, I think. But yeah, they might open up. We'll see.
It'll be interesting to see for sure. I mean, I always try to think of the world we live in and the account for open source chips and technology, which allow us to have fridges or lamps or ACs or cars because it's open source, right? Not because it's not patented somewhere with somebody, because if it was, and I think, I mean, of course, industrialism came long way before the silicon chip existed, but also we think no, of course, but still I think that open source played this huge role in globalizing what we can do with technology, what we are able to achieve inside of our own, without going outside the house, so to speak. But and I'm hoping that in AI, like it's going to be the same direction, that it will take that direction, and people will see that it's good, not bad. But hey, let's see.
For sure. Open. Just the last comment on that. Open source is very good as if you want to build a platform that people build on, I think. So example I gave in a tweet once was that Facebook once had this like developer API. We could come and build apps on top of Facebook. But it was very like closed and it would change a lot. And you just don't want to build a business on top of that, because you could get rugged at any time. And that's kind of true of AI models too. If you're going to build a business on an AI model, which is like very differentiated, so you can't just switch from one to another. It's very risky to do that if, the next version of that could be completely different, or they could just turn off your API access or whatever. So open source is preferred, I think, by developers if they're going to build something, spend a lot of time and effort building on top of something, because then they know they can't get rugged. So yeah, so we'll have to see. It just depends. I think it just comes back to whether whether they plateau or not. Because I think open source models will win if they do, which will be cool.
Amen to that. I have one last question before I'll jump into a small blitz and to finish off with it. But you had a tweet a couple of days ago about the podcast of Pompliano.
Oh
I
yeah.
call him Popliano, but it's an interesting tweet because it's about the future. And, and you said there that his end goal is to transfer your brain to a gold-plated, I'm reading it, sorry, container power to a gold-plated container powered by solar panels and put it into orbit around the sun. Seems unwise to fate someone with such a goal. Now, my question is here, of course, there's the humorous part, but my question is about, we mentioned AI, and we didn't we're very on the super tip of the iceberg, here the conversation. But still, if you were to look into the future and you kind of made a comment about that, I mean, I don't know if I want to talk about transhumanism or anything like that, or how deeply we can get into this conversation when we have at the end of it. But still, what is your take on why is it so sad? And what would be your more positive oversight of our end goal as a society?
Yeah, I mean, I tweeted that quite flippantly. I just listened to JP's podcast with Pomp. JP's one of the founders of Thorchain, who has a new thing now. So he's being very visible on Twitter and doing podcasts and stuff. Yeah, I don't know if he was joking. I think slightly humorous, I suppose, or slightly theatrical. But his idea was, if you want to make people live longer, don't try and preserve the body, just preserve the brain, and hook it up to other electrical inputs. I guess you connect it to the internet or something, and put it in a jar. And once you've done that, you can put it into orbit with solar panels, and just kind of live forever, or for 200 years, or however long brains live without the body. So yeah, I don't have much of a view into that myself. Honestly, I just thought it was kind of funny. So I tweeted it. I'm not sure how it ends up. I think AI is very interesting if you project into the future, because there's discussion about whether we'll achieve AGI or, super ASI within 4 years or 10 years. And I don't know. If you try and think to 1,000 years in the future, given computers were only invented 100 years ago, when I was a kid, they weren't common in businesses or in the home. And in that time, in those 40 years, they've gone from being nowhere to being everywhere. And now they're pretty much at the point where they're as intelligent as us at most things. And so if you think of that's 40 years, if you think of 1,000 years in the future, it's going to be insane. They're going to obviously be much more intelligent than we are. And what that future looks like, I'm not sure. I can't imagine that it ends well. Because you'll have this super intelligence in the hands of everybody, basically. So it'll be, just be freely available by that point. So it'll be like having nukes available in every corner shop. At some point, something's going to go wrong. And so, yeah, I hope that's not the case. Maybe it can be regulated somehow, but I just don't think that's going to be possible. So yeah, we'll see. I think probably not in my lifetime, but at some point in the future. Yeah, it's just interesting to think about what the future looks like given AI is going to be so much more intelligent than we are, what our role is in the world. Are we happy? Are we dead? I don't know. It's going to be a wild time for sure. The next few hundred years.
I mean, your worst nightmare will have to be if in 20 years' time we all wake up with our brains glued to, Voyagers and out there in space. Okay, 3 quick questions, small blitz to finish it off. Look, give me one movie or one book or one film or one song or whatever, movie, film, that's the same thing, that has a positive influence on Luke throughout your life, or at least in the last some years.
Yeah. No, I'd like to give a really impressive highbrow answer. Anyway, the one that comes to mind that I often refer to as I'm trying to be an entrepreneur is Moneyball, that film about baseball. It has Brad Pitt in it. There's just there's some good advice in that film about how to run things, how to manage people. So I think about that film quite a lot. Yeah, so I'd probably choose that one.
Nice. Okay, second one. Give me one that you can share, of course. One motivational thing that keeps Luke out of bed, keeps looking for new startups that are going to be successful, keeps on studying technologies and being on the edge of technology. Something motivational that keeps you going every day that you can share, of course.
Yeah, I think you just need a purpose as a person to be happy. So my purpose right now is this, and that's what gets me out of bed. If I stay in bed all day, it'll be cool for a week or two, but quickly become miserable. So yeah, just keep on pushing, trying to do things that are valuable, useful for people, valuable for the world, or whatever. So that's the thing that gets me out of bed, I would say. Yeah.
Just for everybody out there, 2 weeks in bed, not good, man. You get tired. I was not sorry. Last one. This is going to be a strange one. Dead or alive, real or made up. Could be somebody you know, could be something you read about. So a character, a persona, could be a developer, a family member, an actor, a writer, doesn't matter. Who is not a guru, because I personally don't believe in gurus, but somebody who positively influences your thinking when you think about that character, person, personage, whatever.
Probably gonna have to be Satoshi, right? Such a
strong,
crazy visionary. To come up with that and basically nail it perfectly first time is insane. So I'd just love to, be wild to hear his thoughts on how it's all played out. This is what he wanted or not, and where he sees it going in the future. I imagine he has mixed feelings about how it's ended up, but it would be great to get his thoughts. I'm not sure if he's dead or alive or what.
I thought I was going to say that, what was his feelings would be a great note to end on, but whether he's dead or alive, I was like, that's not a great note to end on. That's quite sad, isn't it? And I was joking. Look, I want to thank you very much for your time and everybody for listening and tuning in. Thank you also for listening and tuning in and for your time. That didn't come out properly, but okay. Look, thank you again for your opinions, for your time, and everybody else. Thank you, and catch you next time.
Thank you.
Thanks. Bye. This content was created by the Citizen Web3 Validator. You may support our work by delegating to any of our nodes.